Tonight, we begin with a diplomatic collapse that Western leaders had long feared, expected, and worked hard to stop. And it didn't happen after weeks or months of careful talks. It happened in one shocking press conference in Moscow. One press conference that wiped out months of diplomatic progress. One press conference that sent NATO allies scrambling to rethink their strategy. One press conference that has now opened the door to what President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling the long war. Today, Vladimir Putin crossed a line that Western governments had hoped, maybe naively, would hold. And once that line broke, Zelensky reacted immediately. He answered with resolve, confidence, and a serious warning that has unsettled capitals from Washington to Warsaw, Berlin to Bucharest. The peace proposal that took months to build, that involved more than 30 nations, and that many believed was the strongest plan yet to end the war, was rejected in less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes of carefully prepared language from the Kremlin? 15 minutes that exposed Putin's real intentions? 15 minutes that may have added years to this war? Tonight, we explain what took place, why it matters, and what Zelensky's warning about a long conflict means for Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and the wider world. For several weeks, unofficial signs, not formal statements or public messages, suggested that Putin was preparing something unexpected. Yes, he has always been unpredictable, but there has been a rhythm to his decisions, a certain pattern that Western intelligence has learned to track. What alarmed officials in Brussels and Washington this week was that the pattern suddenly stopped. Analysts who monitor Kremlin behavior recognize the signals: a sudden drop in foreign ministry briefings, noticeable silence from state media about the peace proposal, the unexplained delay of Putin's planned address to the Federation Council, and the cancellation of a scheduled meeting between Russian and Turkish diplomats. Everything went quiet. And when the Kremlin goes quiet, what follows is usually loud. The NATO-supported peace plan, built over 4 months, was considered a realistic path to ending the war. It included a phased pullback of Russian troops from certain occupied areas, international security guarantees for Ukraine, a path toward EU membership without immediate NATO entry, and a future diplomatic process for Crimea. Western governments believed they had created a plan Putin could at least consider one that protected his public image at home. They were wrong. In the days before Putin responded, intelligence reports showed unusual military activity, Russian units shifting into tighter formations, supply routes coming back to life, and a noticeable silence from mid-level officials who usually signal the Kremlin's direction. Experienced observers knew this meant trouble. Early Thursday morning, officials reported what Western intelligence described as an unusual burst of movement, including a press conference scheduled only 6 hours before it took place. These kinds of sudden diplomatic actions from Putin usually mean one of 3 things: a full rejection, a strategic repositioning, or preparation for escalation. Western analysts didn't know which one this was or if it was all 3 at once. But they did know Putin was changing posture. And when a nuclear-armed leader shifts posture without warning, every major intelligence agency from Langley to London pays attention. The press conference lasted about 45 minutes, but the crucial moment, Putin's response to the peace plan, took just 15. In those 15 minutes, he rejected every element of the NATO framework. He called the territorial proposals surrender disguised as compromise. He dismissed the security guarantees as meaningless promises from a hostile alliance. He described the EU pathway as a hidden road to NATO through economic pressure. And he insisted Crimea's status was not open for discussion now or ever. The rejection was complete, it was deliberate, and it was clearly prepared in advance. Intelligence experts who reviewed the transcript said Putin's language was unusually precise, showing that the Kremlin had planned this reply days, maybe weeks, before it was delivered, even while negotiators believed talks were still alive. Zelensky's warning tonight was not routine, symbolic, or political. It was urgent. After emergency consultations, senior officials called Putin's rejection provocative and calculated and revealing of his true goals for the war. But a rejection only succeeds if it breaks the opponent's will. Ukraine did the opposite. Zelensky gave one of his strongest responses since the full-scale invasion began. Here is what happened next. Within 3 hours of Putin's press conference, Zelensky met with his war cabinet. This was not a regular weekly meeting. It was crisis-level planning, the kind held only when Ukraine must reconsider its entire strategy. Within 6 hours, Zelensky addressed the Ukrainian people. Within 8 hours, he spoke with leaders from the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Poland. And within 12 hours, he delivered his warning to the world. Ukraine must be ready for a long conflict, one that could continue through the next decade. Zelensky did not hide the consequences. He spoke of economic struggle, ongoing casualties, and the emotional strain of more than 3 years of full-scale war. But he also spoke of commitment, strength, and the belief that Ukraine will win no matter how long it takes. Tonight, multiple sources confirm that after Putin rejected the peace plan, Ukraine launched a major military operation targeting Russian supply infrastructure, including a key fuel depot in Kursk Oblast, recently expanded for what analysts believe was a planned summer offensive. Ukraine struck immediately before Russia could regroup. Targets included the Kursk fuel depot, a command center in Belgorod used for coordinating drone strikes on Ukrainian cities, and railway infrastructure near Voronezh believed to be preparing to move ammunition to the front. In short, Ukraine hit the core of Russia's offensive resources, the systems needed for a major new push. This is why Zelensky's warning matters so much. Putin's rejection was not just political theater. It signaled future escalation. It showed a major shift in strategy, a shift that could reshape the war if left unchallenged. Ukraine understood this and responded not recklessly, but strategically. They avoided civilian targets. They avoided banned weapons. They focused on military logistics and leadership. Defense experts say Ukraine's strikes showed high-level planning and precise intelligence stronger than at any previous stage of the war. These weren't random targets. They were chosen because they struck Russia's most vulnerable points. The Kursk fuel depot was identified months ago as crucial to Russia's supply line in the south. Destroying it forces Russia to rely on more distant depots, stretching supply lines and increasing risk. The Belgorod command center directed drone attacks on Ukrainian cities. Disabling it reduces Russia's ability to pressure civilians and buys Ukraine valuable time. And the railway system near Voronezh is central to Russia's movement of troops and equipment from the interior to the front. Damaging it triggers delays that ripple through Russia's entire military system. But the story does not end there. Western intelligence agencies now believe that Putin rejected the plan as a test, a way to check NATO's unity. After months of internal debate over Ukraine aid, Putin wanted to see whether the alliance would split, whether individual countries would push Ukraine to accept worse terms, or whether war fatigue would finally break Western resolve. Instead, the opposite happened. NATO strengthened. Allied governments released a joint statement that was so united and so clear that even Moscow took notice. That does not happen often. Intelligence officials speaking anonymously called Putin's move a strategic mistake. He tried to expose NATO weakness. Instead, he highlighted NATO's strength. Alliance responses were not only fast, they were coordinated. Statements from Washington, London, Berlin, and Paris appeared within minutes of each other, using almost identical language. This timing matters. It proves NATO had prepared for rejection. They weren't reacting, they were ready. They had planned the scenario, they had drafted responses, they had structured their messaging, and when the moment arrived, they executed with remarkable precision. This marks a major shift in NATO's approach. In the early months of the war, the alliance often seemed reactive, racing to respond to Russian decisions. Today, they showed proactive discipline and deeper institutional experience. Throughout the night, new details continued to emerge about the global response. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte held emergency talks with all 32 member states, requiring a full review of military aid timelines. The European Union fast-tracked new economic measures that had been under discussion for months. The United States moved to speed up delivery of long-range strike systems that had been delayed pending the peace talks. This was not just diplomatic frustration. It was strategic recalibration, coalition reinforcement. And strengthening the coalition is something Russia has failed to stop since the start of the invasion in February 2022. Every major Russian move has led to a Western response that improves Ukraine's position. Sanctions have forced Russia to rebuild its economy around war production. Military aid has given Ukraine weapons Moscow never predicted. Diplomatic isolation has pushed Russia to its lowest global standing since the fall of the Soviet Union. This is Rachel Maddow. Thank you for watching, and good night.